the wrath of inflation. So, people start to dig deep. They start to look at, what can I get away with and still, kind of maintain my lifestyle, or what can I get away with and not affect the rent in any way. And so that's what's happening now. It's kind of an unwinding as these costs go up, and they're going to continue to go up. This is what will continue to happen. Is you have to dig in. There are lots and lots of ways to save in these areas.
So this hits homeowners a lot harder than renters. So I always hear small landlords say, well, if my HOA goes up, I'm just going to charge more rent. Or if my insurance goes up, I'm going to just charge more rent. I'm just going to pass it on. But that's not how it works. So market rent and your expenses are two totally different streets, and they don't coincide.
It has nothing to do with anything.
Yeah.
Like literally.
Yeah.
Like, if we have a property tax bill, and by the way, we've had this where we have to pay an extra $100,000 a year on property tax on a big project. What am I going to do? Divide that up between my residents that are already on leases? The answer is no. You cannot push this stuff down. The tenants will move. Mm-hmm. They're going to move to the one across the street where the rents are the same. So to your point, the landlords are going to be whacked. They already are, actually, on the expense side. The homeowner, however, they don't. They're kind of in the same position.
Yeah, they definitely are. And so when we look at what this means, so one of the biggest things that I'm seeing is cutting back, right? And budgeting. But you have to be careful on what you're cutting back on and what you're budgeting on. So I know at my one condo, I was starting to get cockroaches, and I'm like, called the HOA and I said, hey, when's our next spray? Because I have cockroaches. Oh, we're not doing monthly sprays anymore. We're just kind of doing as needed. And I'm like,
yeah.
Yeah. And so on a 300 unit condo complex, an as needed spray per unit here and there is not going to resolve the problem. So I then had to hire a pest control company to come spray my unit every 90 days just to keep the cockroaches out of my unit. Because as you can imagine, in a condo complex, you're going to have cockroaches. So you have to see where you're pulling back. And, our friends, Kathy and Rich Fettke, there was the fires in California, and a bunch of their neighbors had their houses burned down, and they had cut their coverage to not be at replacement cost to save money. And then now they owe, $1 million to rebuild their house because they're short on their policy.
Yeah.
So these are places, you're looking as a homeowner at places to cut back, but you have to look at what you should be cutting back on.
Yeah. And I will tell you, insurance is probably not one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, I hate to say that. And I've been through this, guys, trust me. But I also know when you need insurance, you got to have the right coverage. And, so that's a high deductible. That's totally fine, because now you're kind of, call it self-funding the first piece, but you really do need something bigger, and so that's one of the strategies, of course, is a higher deductible can lower your premium. But for anything big, let's say on our projects, we have $100,000 deductible. When I started in this business, it was $5,000, if you can imagine. It's $100 now for us, but we obviously don't want to ever come back off the coverage, because we do have fires, and we do have things that require. We had a huge hurricane in Houston, Hurricane Ike. This is going way back, but it wiped out 150 of our units, and then we had to tap into it. Now, we did have to fight with Lloyd's of London and went all the way to the Texas Supreme Court. That's a whole nother story. But the reality is we had the coverage, and we ended up replacing the property.
So I think for buyers, what they have to do, and I'm recommending my buyers do this as well, is look beyond the mortgage at your costs, right? Like if you're pushing yourself very, very tight on your payment, you have to understand that you're going to have insurance and property taxes and possibly an HOA. And then when you go to replace something, it's going to be expensive. So you need to be budgeting for that. So I think that that's really important, because previously, when your insurance was kind of cheap and your property taxes were kind of cheap, you didn't have to do that, and you didn't have to account for increases. But now you do. And then I think for investors, it's the same thing, except now you're looking at your cash flow, right? If your cash flow is tight, if your cash flow is $100, $200 a month, you have to know a slight increase in anything or a slight decrease in rent is going to push you under really, really quickly.
Well, this is part of due diligence, So the one thing, just jumping back to HOAs real quick, if you're buying something in an HOA, that is a little bit out of your control, right?
Mm-hmm.
You really need to understand that before you invest. Like that 1-bedroom condo we said, like there's no way you can make something like that cash flow for sure. You got a 1-bedroom, you already paid $350 for it, and you know that your costs are well over $1,000 a month, not including property tax and insurance, right? Somewhere in there, and so you have that. So you need to look at your costs. The cool part about investing is you can actually pull up the property address and to dig into this. You can actually get an insurance quote on a property before you buy it. You can actually go look at your utility costs. You can get pretty close. You can pull up your property taxes. Now, what you do have to budget for is if you buy something for more than it's assessed, they're going to pick that up and your property taxes are going to be higher. Obviously, there's a lag of maybe about a year for that. But the reality is you can kind of budget for all this stuff if you're buying something new or existing, let's say. But with a homeowner, it kind of creeps up on you. It's like death of 1,000 cuts.
Yeah, and I always tell people too, in that due diligence period, that 10-day period you have after you make the offer, especially if you know it's going to be tight, you need to be running all these numbers right away. Finding out the property tax, finding out the insurance cost, all of that stuff.
And on commercial, like multifamily, we'll take 30 to 60 days due diligence because it's super important that you really understand what your costs are. So we walk every single unit. I want to know how many carpets I'm going to need in year 1 and year 2. I want to know if I need new appliances. I want to know if I need to paint a unit, all that kind of stuff. So that's a whole nother piece. But you're stepping into the shoes of the seller, and you need to know that stuff.